What's going to be the easiest thing to implement first to get people to believe the story of scarcity? So we have five events running out there. Which one's going to get the first throw, if you will, to get people to believe that we are actually in a shortage that will manifest visibly for them?
Welcome to the Health Ranger Report on Brighteon.tv. Our special guest today is David Dubine of Adapt 2030. And David Dubine has a kind of an alert for us here about sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere due to several volcanic eruptions. It's lingering in the atmosphere for about the next 18 months, and it is interfering dramatically with crop production and growing seasons and sunlight. It's causing a lack of sunlight to reach the surface of the Earth, especially in certain areas where the clouds are more dense. And we'll show you some shocking satellite maps and some temperature maps that reveal all of this. David Dubine has done all the research and he's sharing it with us. This is really critical to understand because food scarcity and food inflation are both going to get a whole lot worse for the next 2 years. And once you watch this, you'll understand why. So stay with us. Welcome to today's featured interview here on Brighteon.com. I'm Mike Adams, the founder of Brighteon, and today we are joined by one of our fan favorite guests, David Dubine from the channel Adapt 2030. He's also a contributing host to Brighteon.tv. He's a researcher and analyst that has fantastic information about what's affecting the food supply. And today the topic is the cover story for the food shortages that are already emerging. So welcome to the show, David Dubine. It's always an honor to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on. I know we only meet when I have something new to bring out instead of just regurgitating old and trying to respin it. This is something new that's happened since the Shivalush eruption, April 10th. What we're starting to see is sulfur dioxide spinning around the northern hemisphere around 60 degrees north latitude, but it's being caught up in the polar easterlies, causing spinning and cavitation in the atmosphere, and that is going to wind its way all around the Arctic Circle, and the dome of our planet will be covered with sulfur dioxide for the next year and a half.
Wow.
Approximately. So
wow.
Look out for something strange with the sea ice to occur. And crops.
Okay, so wait a second. You sent me a PowerPoint, so if you tell me a slide number, I'll show that slide for people so they can see what you're seeing. Where do you want to begin on that presentation? Got it.
It says polar easterlies with the Hadley cells.
Yep. All right. And tell us what are Hadley cells?
Those are the cloud cells of our planet. The most famous is the Hadley cell. Now, these are the convection that drives the weather systems literally on our planet. The conversion of energies and differentials in pressure from the equator up to the different polar latitudes, whether it's South Pole at the Antarctic or North Pole here that we understand in the Arctic.
Okay.
So this eruption occurred right at 60 degrees north latitude, which is really interesting because it's at that conversion zone of two different cloud cells. So what we have is the polar easterlies are going to be ripping to the east, obviously, and then what we consider regular weather that moves across from west to east in its pattern are right at that conversion zone. So what we're seeing is a lot of twisting into the atmosphere. And with the sulfur dioxide, it's becoming very, very pronounced. And where this cavitation is occurring in these better whirlpools is the best way to look at it in the skies here. Now, these are going to continue to amplify, and the longer it goes, the more it's going to mix the sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. It'll become more of a homogeneous color as we move through these slides here. Give it another 4 months or so, and it should be much more uniform around the top of our planet here.
So the sulfur dioxide in the
Now that it's warm enough for hiking and biking, I really want to feel good. I take C60 EVO olive oil in the morning and have amazing results all day long. It improves my mental focus and clarity so I can complete projects, and I sleep better at night. I definitely have more energy and endurance, and my skin improving. C60 EVO works. They sell 3 potent edible oils that are delicious: olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT coconut. They also make exceptional anti-aging face and lip serums for both men and women. Everything's made in their U.S. labs, and they do ship all around the world. Treat yourself, your pets, and those you love to healthy products that really improve your life. Save 15% off bundled product sets. That's 15% off each bottle. Also, monthly subscriptions, save 20%. Use the code ADAPT2030 at checkout. That's c60evo.com/ADAPT2030. So good, I had to put it in front of the moose. And now on with the video.
This is one of the actual global dimming strategies of the globalists to try to block the sun and shut down photosynthesis and food production. This is what they call a stratospheric aerosol injection. Is it, but maybe they use a different chemical, or what does this have in common with that?
Exactly the same effect to block sunlight. Now, this was a natural eruption, and the final totals were about 72,000 feet, this eruption. But Bismiani went off at the exact same time 2 days later, up to 50,000 feet. And Sangay, now south of the equator, at 52,000 feet. So just in the last 2 weeks, we've had 3 major eruptions that above 50,000 feet, you are going to get regional cooling. But in addition to what Hunga Tonga had thrown out to us with 10% more water vapor in the atmosphere last year from that southern hemisphere, water vapor emission up to 180,000 feet up into the mesosphere and the ice crystal clouds. And now we're combining all these different atmospheric effects from several different eruptions of major proportions over the last year and a half. It's culminating. It's actually really starting to blend in and amplify on itself, one effect amplifying the next.
So let's translate this into real world effects here. So what you're saying is we're going to have, through the water vapor and the sulfur dioxide, we're going to have more blocking of the sun, which will have a cooling effect, as well as denying food crops the normal amount of sunlight that they would use for photosynthesis for plant energy production. So are we talking shorter growing seasons, lower crop yields? What's the actual effect?
And one of the wild cards here is going to be the temperatures. And the temperatures, if they're lower, producing more rainfall, mist, and fog during this time. So what we see is a direct correlation of these sulfur dioxide clouds lowering the temperatures. So the left side, what you're looking at is...
Oh, I'm sorry, there. Okay.
Tropical tidbits. And this is ground temperature. I put it at 2 meters. And on the right side, in the atmosphere, what we're looking at is the sulfur dioxide concentrations at milligrams per cubic meter.
Okay.
So the white out there in the particular slide you're showing, you can see that it looks like almost a DNA strand running through Europe. And then if you look at the ground temperatures, you can see there's some anomalies. In Scotland, they're wondering why winter's back. It's going to be 17 degrees, possibly 20 degrees in Scotland, starts snowing again, and the temperatures are well below freezing. And they're asking why. Well, this is a perfect example why.
So this effect, though, what are the projections of what this means for food production across Europe and North America?
There's a couple things happening in tandem, so let's layer this off for a second. The first thing that we keep hearing in the news is the rice shortage. It's the biggest shortage in 20 years, but in lockstep, the World Economic Forum and others are coming out saying we need to reduce rice production because it produces more methane. So now you need to stop eating. Like being a vegetarian wasn't good enough now. You know how they convinced everybody,
right.
Vegetarian, don't eat meat. And now they're saying, oh, we even need to stop rice production because it produces too much methane. War on food. But then, we had that massive drought on the Mississippi River where they couldn't even send any grain shuttles down, lowest water in 110 to 120 years. So they stacked all those grains on the sides of the Mississippi, all up and down the Mississippi, every storage facility full. And what do we have now? Record floods, bringing us back to 1857.
Okay. All right.
That's insane because we called this, they're going to go to record lows, stack all the grains. And when this fills up, it's going to run down and wash away a bunch of grain. Now, when we come into the planting season, the ozone hole in the southern hemisphere is going to get really wide with a lot of UVB damage from the previous Hunga Tonga eruption. And now delayed plantings or below normal temperatures that are going to swing in and out. And this is something that they had a problem with during the year without a summer. They had these windows that were normal, the regular normal, what you would expect for this time of the year in your local area. But then suddenly they would get, just like you're seeing here, some of these temperatures in those purples and lighter pinks are 15 to 17 degrees Fahrenheit below the normal. So try to plant into that. Now, what kind of disruptions? Because we're right at the beginning of the most disruption in sunlight because the sulfur dioxide hasn't really mixed at all.
Right.
It's still very concentrated in blobs, if you will, and striations through the atmosphere. And as those pass across zones, it's going to drop temperatures for days at a time. So you're going to get this continuous up and down, up and down, up and down temperatures dropping 10, 15 Fahrenheit below the normal that they're used to planting into. So I don't know how many times undulations can go around as this thing, continues to move around the planet before the crops just say, wait a minute, it's too cold. Wait, it's warm enough. Okay, it's too cold. No, it's warm enough.
Well, on top of that, though, too, David, we know because of the economic sanctions against Russia, for example, and the natural gas supply shortage because of the destruction of Nord Stream, which the U.S. carried out, and we've seen shutdowns of fertilizer production facilities across Europe. Fertilizer is going to be very difficult to acquire, much more scarce, more pricey, on top of these weather variations. But a key point, I want to confirm this with you. Anytime the weather goes crazy, you hear from the media, oh, that's climate change, which it's a meaningless term at this point. But what you're saying is, no, it's volcanoes, it's water vapor and sulfur dioxide. Like these are not man-made effects, let's say. These are, quote, natural disasters and the atmospheric effects causing these undulations in temperature and humidity and so on. Is that correct?
That's correct. And where does it lead to? Well, it leads to digital rationing cards, digital IDs, and central bank digital currencies, because how much have they programmed us over the last 5 years of equity, equality, and all these terms that have been built into daily life? Well, if you're coming to a rationing system, you're certainly going to start throwing those keywords around like spare change. And I think that's where it's heading to. Now, the thing is, with all these 5 large factors heading on together, now how could you, as a global system of governance that you want to implement, change systems economically, and also at the same time terrify people with these food shortages to get them to comply and accept a new way to transact in commerce, CBDCs, and also to abandon an older system that everybody's used to. Nobody's going to go quietly in the night unless several things happen. So I'm trying to game this out. There's all these variables here. We know where it leads to. Now, how do you combine these into that messaging actions to get humans to move to the stimulus to push them through that cattle gate over there to the end?
Along those lines, we've seen New York City Mayor Eric Adams proposing what I think a 25 or 30% reduction in what he calls food emissions, which doesn't even make sense. Again, the terms and phraseology that they use to describe this, it's all imaginary. But what they mean is cutting out all meat. And so they want to do to America what the government of the Netherlands has done there, which is shutting down farms in the name of saving the climate. But again, those farms are not the cause of the weather patterns that you're describing or of the crop shortages. It's the dimming of the sun. And plus, we might argue geoengineering is also taking place. So there is some weaponization that can amplify some of the worst effects. So these are engineered food shortages. And then on top of that, government policies come in and they say, oh, we don't want you to eat meat at all. So, and also not rice, right? So what are you supposed to eat? I mean, each other? If you live in New York City, what is politically correct to eat at this point? Like soybeans or what is it? Your thoughts?
Micro farming is the new term they're giving to insect farming. They're calling it micro farming or micro production of food. I mean, one of the things, this is a serious point here. When they were starting to talk about the geoengineering and the applications of it, both Stanford and Yale, David Keith was a little worried when they started their programs that if there was such large eruptions as we're experiencing now, and they had an ongoing geoengineering program, that the combined runaway effect with all the particulates there combined with this exact same set of sulfur dioxide. They never mentioned water vapor like there was from the Hunga Tonga eruption. But one of their main concerns was it would take about 3 years of drift for everything. If they ceased every program on the geoengineering side of things, it would take about 3 years for everything to drift out of the sky and make it back to ground level. But once you added the sulfur dioxide particulates in conjunction with that, then they were looking at 2 to 3 years of quote unquote runaway effects. Now, they didn't really define those effects as much as, but I can believe that they were concerned about cooling. So what are we going to eat? Lab engineered foods? I mean, is this geoengineering program going to kick into like a 10x now because all the other natural, constituents are up there for them to amplify and ride on top of a natural cycle? That should be the question is, all right, so we have this cooling on the ground that you can see very evident from, the sulfur dioxide drift and the blobs and the striations directly correlated to immediate cooling on the ground. Now, how nefarious would they be to run up a bunch more particulates to help that cool even further and disrupt the agriculture on purpose in order to facilitate all these goals that are meant for us to move to, fast track it?
So they can, they can amplify all of this. And you're 100% correct, David. But then at the same time, they are dismantling the infrastructure that provides food and energy domestically. I was just covering yesterday in California, they are proposing essentially outlawing all diesel locomotives by the year 2030, or it's in phases, I think 2035 for other things. But they're basically saying they don't want diesel powered trains, which is, all long haul trains are diesel electric trains. And they say they don't want any diesel engines in the state of California. So, I ask you, David, moving fertilizer, moving grain to ranches and farm animals, moving coal to power plants, moving raw materials for production. No trains means, frankly, no California. I don't know how these people think that they're going to have a functioning economy if they don't have trains, and they also want to ban trucks that have, combustion engines. But there are no battery powered trains. I don't know what fictional alternate reality they're living in, but they think you can just plug batteries into trains and that's going to work. It doesn't work. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, those are for kids in the basement. But there's this new article I just got here, just came out, CPKS Railroad merger and U.S. wheat exports. So they're going to take the Kansas City Southern Railway Company, KCS, and then combine it with Canadian Pacific Railway Limited, CP. And they're going to have a North American, it stretches all the way from Canada. It runs completely east to west through Canada, through the central part, Kansas City, and all the way down into Mexico City, DF. And this is the North American, there's a huge ramp up in the North American Union talk right now. Well, this is seems the rail system that's going to combine it and tie it all together for grain deliveries across 3 nations. That doesn't work on battery power. Not a chance, 0%. So I know a couple, dairy persons out in California, and they run everything from Midwest rail out there. So does that mean that every single herd needs to leave California if you're not able to bring it by rail into California? I think the answer is quite apparent. It would have to be a yes. So where do you find, 10,000 acres to bring your cattle to if you're going to move out of California? And you're going to need even 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres. Where are you going to just find that to set up and put all the infrastructure in for dairy and get that up and running? Not going to happen in 30 days. I guarantee that.
Well, it also begs the question. You're just describing infrastructure that can haul loads between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And you have to have transportation or you have no economy, period. California is shutting down transportation out of this climate cultism for the same reason that New York City is shutting down, meat in the food supply. And it's the same reason the Netherlands are shutting down meat production and other European countries as well. So my concern, and you've kind of hinted at this, but is you've got these insane climate cultist political leaders who are destroying the system at the same time that these volcanoes have erupted, and you've got water vapor, you've got sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, you've got temperature variation there. And the combined effects of this is going to be a runaway feedback loop, a self-reinforcing feedback loop of food doom that none of the politicians are anticipating. So I think you're the expert, but aren't we going to be seeing record food scarcity and food inflation for years because of this?
Yes. And that word hyperinflation, it won't be used in the same sentences because they'll look and go, oh, The furniture, it's not hyperinflation. Look, that chair from whatever furniture store, that only went up 5%. Imagine if your food's not only what if your food runs up 10x, and there'll be very specific slots of the economy that will run into hyperinflation, but there'll be other sectors that'll be almost zero affected. There might be some cost increase, very slight. So that'll give them also with the narrative, of course, we're not in a hyperinflationary event. Look, your furniture costs the exact same as it did a year ago.
Well, food's not even part of the official government inflation numbers.
No, that's such a fake number there.
Yeah, it's completely fake. But you're right. I mean, we could be looking at food doubling every 12 months for a couple of years here. 2 years later, it could be 400% higher cost.
I'm wondering how they're going to work the narrative in to get the biggest amount of fear and scare out of it to get you to comply to a rationing system. Now, most Americans I know would absolutely be saying, no, that's unacceptable. You give me my thing. I have enough money to buy it. Now, we're going to approach a point here where I don't care if you have the money, it's just not going to be available, or it's going to be greatly restricted. You've been trained already. Stand 6 feet apart, get outside the store. And as we march through this sort of hyperinflationary food event or inavailability or there's going to be many variables to it. You'll probably have to prove funds before you can go in, because there'll be flash mobbing and rioting. We spoke about this last year, and it's very close to what we had talked about at this point right now. And you'll probably have to show some sort of ID. Now, I don't know in the beginning, your driver's license will probably be good enough until they get you onto a digital ID system, which will need to be presented with proof of funds. Now, perhaps that could take on something with a CBDC role in that. But to just wander into the stores and go shopping freely, your days of that are very limited. We're coming into a point where it's going to be controlled on purpose, because you need to be controlled to get you into the new system, because you will not go quietly.
Well, you're exactly right. We saw that during COVID, where a lot of grocery stores set up the infrastructure to bring the food to you in the parking lot. And I can see that transitioning to where you're not even allowed to enter the store. So, okay, it's like, you give us your order, you give us your money, you wait in your car. If we approve, then we'll bring you the food, but you don't even come in the store. And if we don't approve, you're just not going to get anything. Good luck, have fun. And they will put in restrictions, especially on so-called emissions producing food, like meat products, as they're doing in New York City. So you'll be limited to 1 pound of ground beef a week or something, let's say, or 1 dozen eggs a week. You get the idea. Or 1 gallon of milk, whatever it is. And that will be enforced through the digital wallet system that they're trying to drive everybody into. And I can also see, David, that the universal basic income that they're going to have to start pushing, because of massive joblessness and layoffs across, we're talking about an engineered collapse of the economy, but the UBI will be through the digital system, and it will say, okay, here's credit for you to buy food, but by taking this credit, you agree to our restrictions of which foods you're allowed to buy. And so people sign up for that mark of the beast system. They're going to be told what they can and can't purchase. You think that's coming?
I do. And then even if you are able to purchase it and they bring out, let's say I want 2 tomatoes or, some celery or whatever it is that you're going to get. And then what if they bring you out wilted, almost completely rotten? You have 12 hours to use this, or else the worms are going to start coming out of the skin, kind of thing. You're not going to have a choice when somebody else provides you the food. You're not going to walk through and go, no, that looks a little old. I'll take this one. Those days of choice will be gone. You'll be given what you get, and you will be thankful for what you get.
This is centrally controlled government food lines, just a little more elegant.
Yeah, it'll be an elegant line. After all, it's America. It's the most prosperous nation, freest country in the world. So it'll have to be elegant while we stand in line, won't it? They'll probably have bells and whistles and, but what's going to be the easiest thing to implement first to get people to believe the story of scarcity? So we have five events running out there. Which one's going to get the first throw, if you will, to get people to believe that we are actually in a shortage that will manifest visibly for them?
And thank you for watching today. I'm Mike Adams, the founder of Brighteon.com, and we've been talking with David Dubine of Adapt 2030. Take care, everybody.